I think, Scott, you hit on something which is interesting, is that you have really numbers reflecting that both sets of participants, both parties, have people who are truly dissatisfied with parts of their own party, which brings up the possibility of a third-party candidate. And this is how we asked the question. Asking this question was key. Would you be interested in a third-party candidate if it is a Biden-Trump rematch in 2024? 49% of the country said they would now consider voting for a third-party candidate if the 2024 election was a rematch of 2020. And the overarching sort of cloud on this, or person who would be hanging over this, is West Virginia's Joe Manchin, who has refused to close the door on a potential third-party presidential bid. Scott, two-part question. People always say they want third-party candidates or think about them, and then when they get into the ballot box, when we get into the race, it doesn't really happen, number one. Number two, how important is the modifier on the question of if it is a rematch?
Let's take your first part of your question. Everyone says these things to the pollsters. Everyone tells a pollster they eat 3 servings of vegetables a day and they only watch PBS. We know that stuff isn't true. And so this is the thing you say. One thing I will say is we are looking at historically low approval ratings for the government in general. If you're a Democrat, you don't like Congress. If you're a Republican, you don't like Congress.
And if you're a Democrat or a Republican, you don't like the media. But
you don't like the media, all these things. And so this question is a reflection of that dislike, right? And the way the question was phrased is, would you consider, not would you vote? And so I am a little bit surprised. I saw this and we triple checked the numbers, and then we looked at other polls out there. This is on the higher end of the spectrum. Usually this question polls, and it's usually worded a little different, in the 35 to 45%. So this is on the higher end, and I think it is a reflection of that. The second point of your question is, look, at the end of the day, when we look at how these things machinate and how they're going to come out, there's probably only going to be top 2 that matter. Joe Manchin wants to stay relevant. I'm sure we'll talk about his race in the coming months. He's got to figure some things out there, but the polling is going to shift a lot in this next 6 to 7 months. This is interesting to talk about, but I don't think it's going to be indicative of what we're going to see.
And I think that there's something that the American people are just really desperate for, and that's a different story, a new narrative. They've heard enough of the same thing. So all of us can fill in the blanks for anything that anyone's saying on TV now. We already know what the rebuttal will be, what the opening argument, what the closing argument will be. We're not interested in hearing more of the same thing. We're looking for solutions. And I think whenever you see that politicians aren't leading with the best interests of Americans, but their own political interests, we get disgusted and we look for an alternative.
But what wouldn't you consider? If you ask me what I consider A, B, C, and D in any circumstance, I'd say, yeah, I'd consider it. But when given the real choice between 3 different candidates and stuff, I think it's going to be the top 2, Democrat and Republican, because the third party historically hasn't been able to compete. Even if you go back to Ross Perot, that didn't
compete, but certainly changed the election, right?
He delivered it to the White House.
Bill Clinton. And Chris Matthews, formerly of Hardball, was on the program last night as we talked about 1992, and he said that the Democrats should be very worried about Joe Manchin, not because of how he's going to do across the country, but how he's going to do in the states that really matter, specifically if Joe Biden wants to keep the White House. Take a listen.
And I think Joe Manchin's a bigger problem if he runs third party, if he picks up this appeal from the no labels crowd. Look, there are people that think Biden is too old. There are people that think he spends too much money. And along comes Joe Manchin, a Democrat. If he runs in this 3-way race, which could be a 3-way race, it'll be very damaging to Biden, and I think he shouldn't do it.
How damaging specifically to Joe Biden in Western Pennsylvania, Eastern Ohio, Southern Michigan? These are the places that Joe Biden has to win.
North Carolina. Yeah. Any one of these places. You know what? I haven't seen any good public polling. I've heard there's been very little private polling on it, but I'm sure we're going to see it in the next 6 months. All he's got to do is take 1 to 3% of the voters in Georgia, or 1 to 3% of the voters in Michigan or Pennsylvania. This is an entirely different race. I think Joe Manchin knows that. I think No Labels knows that. I also think they know that, a candidate like this, you got to start at 0 before you get to 50. So that's what they're telling everyone. And so that's why I think it's possible he's probably gonna get in. But the numbers don't lie. He doesn't have to win all of them to be a spoiler. He's just got to win a few percent in a couple of these states.
Aren't we forgetting about his backyard, though? I mean, he's up for re-election. He's going to have a tough race with the governor governor of West Virginia running against him. That's the bigger factor in whether he gets in or not, isn't it?
A tough.
I think that's why he gets in.
That's why he gets in. Right?
Yeah.
Okay. And now the question would be for Democrats who are looking at this, right? What do they offer Joe Manchin? What do they promise him to stay out? Do they offer him a place in the next administration if Joe Biden wins?
Well, we offered him everything in the kitchen sink, and it didn't help the first 2 years of the Biden administration. He blocked a lot of legislation. I think it's going to be.
He got screwed.
He does.
He does. He feels very burned.
I think we got screwed with Joe Manchin.
Well, this is Washington, right? It's a universal feeling. Thanks for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to subscribe. Click the red button to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.